click the links to support the channel. All right, the Oscars are down to 10 million viewers from, I think last year was 24 million, but that is also down year to year from 2015 when it was about 44 million. So it's been taking a nosedive, I guess, around Trump derangement syndrome. I can't imagine why. Okay, let's scroll through some of the worst dressed. These were a lot of fun. And some of these I didn't actually think were that bad, which probably tells you something about my taste. It runs to the gaudy. Wokeness is a one-way street. Entertainment is viewed by these people as a valid form of propaganda. In fact, these movies have changed where, well, I mean, I guess it was always propaganda, but at least at one time they tried to be subtle. But now they're openly talking about it. It's the reason they're making a lot of these movies. They try to craft the movie around some narrative that they're trying to put forward, and it's not some classical narrative of storytelling, because a lot of those have a nationalist or a religious centered vibe around them, or at least those stories are not possible in this globalist, Marxist, socialist, Leninist utopia that they kind of envision. Diversity and inclusion means if you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody. They did the same thing to comics. Putting POC characters in something doesn't, on average, grow the audience. It shrinks it. The drawing power of WOC, breastless lesbians, is actually not as great as they seem to think. And I see a lot of variables in this equation. You get insanely alt-left, globo-homo, Hollywood taking their anti-white masks off. You got the woo flu shrinking the big screen audience. And then you've got the BLM elephant in the room, i.e. they have a narrative of being the victim when in reality they're the ones hurting people. So things are going to get spicy when someone with a big platform starts talking about that issue. I wouldn't hold your breath though, but well, we'll see. The rise of social media, the censorship, and the creation of alt media. People seem to overlook stuff like YouTube and all these other video hosting platforms, but every minute you're watching social media is a minute you're not watching Disney. There's only so many hours in the day. Of course, Google is trying very hard to turn themselves into Disney, so then you get Odysee, Gap TV, BitChute, and DLive. And you've got these alt-left kids on Twitter are arguing on how to use YouTube to censor the right wing and not the left. But if they want YouTube, they can have it. And yeah, it's going to be the top dog for a while. But Odysee and Gab are absolutely blowing up. When the edgiest content on YouTube is Tim Pool and the Quartering, it's time to look for something that allows a bit more spice. But I've been paying attention to the situation because it feels like the alt-left media machine is losing some of their power. There is no substitute for the big screen. Even when people start going back to the theaters, I don't think the numbers are ever going to recover, because the media kind of shot themselves in the foot here. They spent a year saying that this is the bubonic plague. Well, at least in the beginning, they said magically you don't need a mask. And then a couple weeks later, the same experts trusted the science and said, yeah, you do need a mask. And magically a cheap dust mask that won't filter out these... won't filter out even dust that well, would do the trick. And then you needed two masks, and then, well, you get the idea. They said it was a bubonic plague. Most people don't want to go sit in a theater if they think they're sitting next to a potential Typhoid Mary. I didn't think this outfit was horrible. It was silly. It looked like a cosplay, but it wasn't obnoxiously bad like the woman above who looked like she was a tampon. I didn't think this was horrible either. They said it looked awkward, had an awkward feel to it. Yeah, all right, it wasn't, I don't know, tailored correctly, but it's just kind of forgettable. It's not in-your-face ugly. Hollywood is full of the sickest, most narcissistic, self-absorbed people on earth. They're not going to disappear, but there is so much competition for your attention that Hollywood is going to lose out some market share. Even 20 years ago, Hollywood had a magic that post-Trump derangement syndrome is absolutely gone. There are too many Epstein Weinstein horror stories that are coming out of Hollywood, which is bad enough, But what is worse is everyone else has enabled that behavior. People like Barbara Walters and Oprah Winfrey were involved. And this doesn't look like a horrible outfit to me, except for the shrimp purse. And then when the wind comes up, she looks like a spitting lizard. But again, they've enabled this behavior for a long, long time. Barbara Walters did an interview with a victim of abuse from these Hollywood parasites, and she tried to cover it up. They cheer people like Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, and then they go hang out with Giselle Maxwell and Maria Abramovic. Hollywood is vermin that thinks it is a human. Getting lectured from these ticks and leeches is a step too far. How much perversion and degeneracy can be found in Hollywood before people realize that they need to make their own Hollywood or some substitute, which admittedly is not easy to make a big budget film, but I think you're going to see fewer of those thanks to the gift from China. A lot of Hollywood looks like if they have to dress themselves, they don't do such a hot job on it. Again, I don't think this is horrible. It's just a lot of this stuff is just, it looks less like Hollywood and more like you and your friends are just going to a fancy dress party, something like that, if you know what I mean. The fun thing about social media is that we can point out the hypocrisy of these cockroaches in Hollywood. Some actor will fly on a private jet to an environmental conference, burn 50,000 gallons of fuel, then give a lecture to the plebeians, peons, the common folk, that we need to ride the bus. Or Al Gore in one of his mansions will spend $100,000 a month burning fossil fuels to heat and cool it. Or they'll ride in Suburbans that get 12 miles to the gallon, stop a few blocks away from an event, pull a bicycle out, and ride the rest of the way while the Suburban lumbers along behind them. Even Greta, their hero, took a sailboat to a conference, but the crew had to fly around on jets to prepare the boat so she could pretend to be an environmentalist. Do you guys care so much about the environment that you're replacing the low birth rate, small environmental footprint Europeans in Europe and America with high birth rate people from the third world who don't give two shits about their carbon footprint? Literally, none of it makes sense. What is causing your cognitive discordance is that you were viewing them, their acts, and their argument in good faith. Stop that. Again, this doesn't look horrible, but it just doesn't look like Hollywood. It looks like she's just going to a family event or something. I mean, I'm sure this is a $6,000 outfit, but it like all this stuff just misses the mark. They, Hollywood, are evil, hypocritical people. It's hard for most normies to understand that. Just keep reminding yourself that these are Epstein Weinstein people who stood and applauded for Roman Polanski. These people are organically sick and corrupt. Let me put it this way. I don't know if they literally worship Lucifer with their Epstein Abramovic rituals of, spirit cooking and all that stuff. But it's not really out of the realm of possibility to suggest that if Satan was real, these hyenas would worship at his cloven hooves. Like all the eyes wide shut nonsense is just window dressing, probably. I mean, they just want to get together, drink champagne, and do cocaine. Who doesn't? But they go a bit further in that they really do struggle, snuggle women and children. They view themselves as a magical group and the rest of humanity as cattle to be exploited. The Oscars and awards shows are them spending 3 hours blowing each other. But that is changing because even last year they only had 24 million. Now they've got 10 million. Seeing their feet of clay has taken a lot of the glamour magic away. They give themselves awards. They kind of said they were important for a long enough time that people slowly started to believe it. Again, not a horrible dress. However, you need a rockin' body to pull this off. And it's got to be skin tight. And you got to be like 110 pounds with huge something to pull this off. And it's not tailored correctly, and she doesn't have the body for it. It just looks like straight up and down. And it just gets busier and busier the more you look. Again, this doesn't look horrible to me. It's like a bit gaudy, but it's like these aren't like Bjork with her swan dress type of thing. How do you leave the house wearing that? Um, that, ooh, what the hell? How do you leave the house with that? Yeah, that looks like, again, a $6,000 outfit. Well, you look like an idiot. Why are you wearing a bandana across your face? The gift from China is like, was it 12 microns or something? Or no, it's like a tenth of a micron. You know, the pore spaces on these masks are like orders of magnitude larger. And, bruh, how did you think that was cool? I don't know. People, like, we all have this image of ourselves, and then once you see a photograph of yourself, you're like, oh, I got fat. I need to do something about that. Buddy, you kind of look like Oprah Winfrey. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, guys. I will see you all on Alt Media.